Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Really means a lot to me. I got asked a very good question on YouTube. Is a CRA above a CRC? And the answer is, or the question itself is telling because the question itself to someone with experience doesn't make too much sense, but I can see how to an outsider it could be confusing. So it depends how you assess above and below. First of all, it's very rare that the CRA and the CRC are even a part of the same organization. So if anything, they are equals to each other. They're supposed to be stakeholders from different organizations working together for achieving positive outcomes for a study, right? And I don't mean study results, positive outcome. They have no control over that. I mean following the protocol, following good clinical practice, making sure enrollment's on time, all that stuff. Data integrity. So a CRA, many people think a CRA is above a CRC. And even at the site level, you have CRAs and their only job is really to make sure that the coordinator is doing what they're supposed to be doing. So from that perspective, it would appear like they are their manager, but they're really not. And they really have no weapons other than eventually putting the site on a screening hold, or if it's serious issues, getting the site audited. So they do have some degree of power over the site with those two tools. They can also make life very tough for the coordinator by just being on them about everything. But ultimately, if the PI gets involved, and if the PI, and I've had situations like this, I'm not the PI, but let's say the site director, which I am. If you have a difficult monitor and your coordinator's complaining to you, like, hey, you know what? This monitor is pretty difficult. You do, as the site director, bark up the food chain at the CRA's organization. You find the CTM, which is the clinical trial manager, or even better, you find somebody at the sponsor level and you let them know, hey, we've kind of have a mini problem on our hands. I'd like to be proactive about it and resolve this problem before it gets out of hand. I've had monitors replaced at my site because they had bad attitudes. I've also had to get involved with monitors on behalf of my coordinator and just have one-on-one conversations with them. Like, listen, I know your job's stressful, but my coordinators are complaining that you are making their lives difficult and unpleasant. And I don't want to get other people involved. I want to just work this out. What's the issues? How can we resolve this? So it might seem like the CRA is above the CRC, but really they're not. But the reason they are perceived that way is you need more experience as a CRA to be a CRA than you do to be a CRC. Now you have these interesting dynamics where you have experienced coordinators that are dealing with relatively inexperienced CRAs where they definitely don't perceive themselves to be underneath the CRA. So the more sophisticated way of looking at it is they're actually equal stakeholders in the entire process. Neither the CRA does not have the power to fire the coordinator. The CRA does not have the power to write up the coordinator like a site director would or a manager of that coordinator does. And neither does the coordinator have the power to do anything like that to the CRA. So in that sense, they're equal. Now, CRAs typically get paid more, and CRAs, at least to be a CRA, you need more experience than you do to be a CRC. That doesn't always mean the CRA is more experienced than the CRC, because I know I might get hate for that last comment. But I thought it was important to bring this topic up and to have a discussion about it because they are completely separate organizations generally that the CRA works for than the site works for. And if anything, they are on equal footing. But the CRA does have some indirect power in the sense of if they're not liking the metrics that they're seeing because the CRA gets judged by the sponsor and their manager based on how well the site is doing. The coordinator, if it's at a good site, gets judged by their manager, which is usually the site director or the PI, on how they're doing based on feedback from the CRA. So when those two things are out of line, you start getting people getting in trouble indirectly for different reasons. But no, the CRA is not above the coordinator, and neither is the coordinator above the CRA. Hopefully this helps. Like, subscribe, comment, share. Let me know your thoughts. Bye bye.